My wife invited her toxic father hoping to mend my relationship with him, but his manipulative plan backfired and cost him everything. My wife, Jenny, a 25-year-old female, and I, a 25-year-old male, had been together for over 10 years. We met when she moved here with her family, and we attended the same high school. We got together when we were 15, have been together ever since, and even got married 2 years ago. Jenny's mom passed away 3 years after she moved here, and since then, it's just been her and her dad, Frank, which was always a problem for me because her dad has never liked me. He thinks I'm a spoiled brat, only because my dad's a successful businessman, and I grew up wealthy. But anyone who knows me well would know that I'm nothing like that. I am grateful that my family was able to give me a nice life, so I never had to worry about money, but that's about it. It's not something that I've ever felt the need to brag about, nor do I talk about my family's wealth. I am now a veterinarian and earn well enough to provide for myself and my wife, so we can afford the kind of life we want to lead. Jenny wasn't as well off, and Frank didn't like the fact that she was with me simply because he thought I was not good enough and hadn't worked a day in my life. But Jenny and I didn't care about any of that. After she graduated, she made it very clear to her dad that she'd be marrying me, and there was nothing he could do to change that. He'd been nagging her to find someone else, but she put her foot down. Frank wasn't happy about it, but they were all they had, so out of fear of losing his daughter, he agreed to accept me. So, we got married within a few years. I thought that after we got married, Frank would warm up to me or at least try to be nice for Jenny's sake, but things got worse instead. Every time we'd go to visit him, he'd make it a point to taunt me, mock me, and humiliate me. Jenny tried to stop him, but he'd tell her that he'd already let her marry me, and that was the most he could do for us. I tried to brush it off the first few times for Jenny's sake, but even I have my limits. After a month or so, I lost my temper, and we got into a really bad verbal spat. That was when I decided to go no contact with that man. I tried my very best to be nice to him and win him over, but after this many years, if he wasn't ready to accept me, then maybe he never would. So, that was the last time I spoke to him willingly. I didn't stop Jenny from visiting him from time to time, since she really did love her dad, and she didn't have any other family here to speak of, so I couldn't deprive her of that. She tried to get us to talk several times after that, but I wasn't willing to interact with him at all, so she gave up after a while. Frank and I haven't spoken in almost 2 years, and I was fine with this arrangement. About 2 weeks ago, Jenny and I found out that she was pregnant, and we were obviously ecstatic. We didn't plan on having a baby this early, but the timing just felt right, and we're trying to go with the flow here. I wanted to tell my parents that very moment, but Jenny wanted to make it special. So, we decided to invite them over for lunch yesterday, Sunday, since none of us had work, and break the news to them. I agreed to that, and for a week, I waited for this special day. But it was all ruined when Frank showed up. After Frank and I went no contact, my wife and I had an unspoken agreement that she could meet him whenever she wanted to, but he wasn't allowed to visit us, not after the way he treated me. She'd respected that so far, but she finally gave in this time and invited her father over for lunch. My parents arrived right on time, but even after they'd come, my wife told me to wait for some more time before she actually served lunch. I was confused since we hadn't discussed inviting any friends or other people, but she kept glancing at the door and was being very squirrely the whole time. Then, finally, about half an hour later, Frank showed up. It goes without saying that I was not prepared for that. I was stunned when my wife opened the door, and I saw him entering. My own parents looked equally surprised. He didn't look too happy about the situation either, but he did greet us all and even grunted a hello to me, which I thought was uncharacteristically polite of him. Once they all sat in the living room, and Jenny was setting up the table for lunch, I pulled her aside and asked her why she'd invited her dad without consulting me first. She told me that had she asked me, I would have said no instantly, so she had to do it behind my back. Obviously, I would have said no, and I believe anyone in my place would have also said no as well, but it still didn't justify the fact that she went behind my back and did something so sneaky. Jenny and I don't lie to each other, we don't keep secrets from each other, so this was a huge blow to me. She explained to me that she really wanted her only living parent to be part of this, and now that she was going to become a mother herself, she wanted her child to have a happy family. She told her father that she wanted him to apologize to me, and he'd agreed to come by today and make amends. So, she wanted me to make an effort to fix our relationship as well. I was surprised that he'd agreed to apologize, so when I heard that, I decided that if he was willing to make an effort, then so would I. I went back to the living room, where all my parents were trying to make conversation with Frank. I didn't notice any difference in his demeanor while I was sitting with him, though, but still, I held on to what my wife had told me and tried to be nice to him because I thought that he'd apologize later after lunch and keep the atmosphere light until then. A little while later, lunch was served, And Jenny had been careful enough to include all my favorites, which was a really sweet gesture. So, I tried to talk to Frank at the lunch table as well, but he only continued to eat and replied with a single word or just grunted at my attempts to converse. I realized halfway into the meal that this attempt to bond was not going as well as I thought it would go, and I could see Jenny's crestfallen face when she realized that her dad was making it very difficult and awkward for all of us. Still, we finished our lunch in silence, and we were about to reveal the pregnancy to give us all something to smile about and cut the tension, but before that, Frank stood up and said that he had an announcement to make. Jenny looked just as confused as I felt, so I knew she didn't have any idea about what he was about to say or do, and had she known, I highly doubt that she would have even invited him over. Frank told us that a few days back, Jenny had asked him to come over for lunch and to rebuild our relationship from scratch so that she could have a happy family once more, and he'd agreed to it because he loved his daughter. So far, so good, but then he said that even though he did love his daughter, he couldn't bring himself to accept that she'd married into a family like ours, where we were making her slave away in the kitchen and at work while I was treated like a king and did absolutely nothing. He knew that I'd grown up watching my mother do all the household work while my dad worked outside, and so, even though I was forcing my wife to do all the work at home in addition to the job that she already had, he wasn't ready to let his daughter live like that. He said that he'd always known that I'd grow up to be a spoiled brat, and he was right. So, now he wanted Jenny to divorce me and move back with him because he hadn't raised her to be somebody's housemaid. I was furious while he was saying all that and was about to respond, but before I could say anything, Jenny was the one who finally snapped and got into a nasty spat with her dad. She accused him of lying to her and pretending to be willing to apologize just so that she would invite him, only to insult me and my parents when we'd done nothing but be nice to her and Frank. Everyone was shocked to see her screaming her head off like that because Jenny is generally a very even-tempered person and rarely ever gets mad at anything. So, to see her like this was very unusual and concerning. I didn't want her to get more upset either, so I tried to take her away to another room, away from Frank, who was also in her face and screaming right back at her about how she was degrading herself by working for me and that the only reason he'd come here today was to take her back, so he wasn't leaving without her. This went on for a while, and eventually, my dad had to step in to stop the fight from escalating further because Jenny was sobbing and simultaneously trying to argue with her dad, and Frank was not going to give up either. So, he told Frank that he had to leave now, or else he would call the police, and that would not be good for him. Then Frank had the audacity to turn on my dad and threaten him to call the cops and see what he'd do. By then, I was not only scared for Jenny's health, since she was 4 weeks pregnant, and I didn't want her to fall sick due to all the screaming and fighting, but I was also angry that Frank was trying to threaten my family under my roof. So, I somehow managed to get Jenny to go to another room to calm down, and then I confronted Frank and told him that he needed to leave, and he needed to make it quick, or else we'd definitely call the cops. So, he finally left, but still said that he was going to come back for his daughter and wouldn't let us off the hook so easily for making her work so hard. He cursed us out before leaving, but he finally did go away. So did my parents after a short while, once they'd made sure that Jenny and I were okay. They told us to take care and left because my dad already had a problem with high blood pressure, and this had just aggravated it, so they went back home to relax. Jenny was pretty much inconsolable after that and cried herself to sleep while I sat beside her and comforted her. She woke up at 7 in the morning today and has been quiet but doesn't seem like she's fully recovered from yesterday. Now, I really do want to talk to her about her dad and tell her that after yesterday, I don't think it's a good idea for her to visit him either because he was psychotic, and I don't think it's good or safe for the baby. I'm thankful that he wasn't able to find out about the pregnancy yesterday, or maybe he never would have left. But now, I want to make sure that he doesn't find out and leaves us alone. I'm even willing to go the legal route and file for a restraining order right now so that he doesn't bother us again. But I don't know if right now is the correct time to bring this up, given that the wound is still raw. I just want to discuss our next step fast because I want to be able to put as much distance as I can between my wife, my child, and Frank. So, would I be the asshole if I decided to speak to my wife about getting a restraining order against her father today? So I took the advice I got here and decided to speak to her later to avoid another confrontation. I think I made a good call because she still seems really upset. I think I heard her sobbing in the shower. She's already so hormonal and emotional right now, this is really the last thing that she needed. I swear I would never have let him in at all if I'd known what he would do and how it would impact Jenny's mental health. Also, I want to get a couple of things out of the way right now. Jenny and I don't always stick to traditional gender roles, and it's not even something that we actively discuss or think about. Some days, I take over the household chores, and sometimes she does. We have a maid who does most of the cleaning for us and washes the dishes as well, but we have to cook for ourselves and do our laundry ourselves, so we divide those few tasks between us equally. Sometimes, if I'm too tired, then she takes over, and I do the same if she's exhausted because we're both working individuals. I'm a veterinarian, and she's an HR manager, so both of us have busy schedules, but we still manage to take out time for the mundane things and sometimes even do it together. Yesterday, it was Jenny who wanted to take over the cooking, and I did help her too, but I guess Frank is too blinded by his hate for me to consider that possibility. As for what he said about my parents, he's not wrong. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was a businessman who was out for work all day, but I don't think it was a bad thing. They respected each other for the amount of hard work they put in and made sure that I was taken care of at all times. My mother quit her job to take care of me because she wanted to, not because my dad made her. I don't think people like Frank are ever going to realize that my mom was a high school math teacher, so she was ready to give that up to spend more time with me, and I think that's absolutely fine because it was her choice. So, if anyone believes that I'm treating my wife like a maid, then they're sorely mistaken and know nothing about me. In fact, we treat our maid nicely as well because we believe that everyone is deserving of respect, and I don't think Frank gets that at all. I would hate for my baby to have such a negative influence around us, so I'm hoping that we're able to keep him away, and I'm going to bring the restraining order up with my wife in a few days. So, it's been almost 3 days since the disastrous lunch, and today my wife and I finally addressed the issue. She'd skipped work for the last 2 days and was staying at home because she felt too upset to focus on anything at all, and I thought that was a good call, given how she'd said barely anything to me or in general. Today, she finally went to work but came back early, and since she seemed a little better today, I decided to talk about her dad. I've been walking on eggshells around her and didn't know how to talk to her about this, so I just blurted it out without thinking twice. I told her that we needed to do something about him, and the best way forward would be a restraining order. We were lucky that he hadn't tried to contact us yet, but eventually, we'd have to announce our pregnancy, and if he found out about that, then he was bound to show up. I thought she was going to be against the idea, but she agreed with me and told me that even she'd been considering the same, especially after how her dad had behaved with her. She told me that she'd been really disheartened by his behavior and even more so by the fact that he'd actually threatened us. She also apologized to me for inviting him without asking me first because that's what led to this in the first place. We're thinking about talking to a friend of ours who happens to be a lawyer, and I think we're going to file for a restraining order in a few days. If he gets in touch with us within this week, then that's just all the more reason for us to go ahead with it. Even though I'm hoping that he leaves us alone at this point. We had a meeting with a lawyer today, and the timing couldn't have been more crucial. This very morning, before we'd even had a chance to discuss our next steps, my wife received an extensive email from her father that was nothing short of manipulative. In it, he expressed his deep disappointment with the life choices she was making, painting himself as the concerned parent who only wanted what was best for his daughter. But what really crossed the line was when he invoked her late mother's memory, claiming that if she were still alive today, she would be heartbroken and ashamed to see that their daughter wasn't even attempting to live up to the high standards and values that she had worked so hard to instill in her. He weaponized the memory of the one person Jenny loved most in this world, knowing full well how much it would hurt her. At this point, I can only describe his behavior as ridiculous nonsense, because he persistently portrays our marriage as if I'm some tyrannical husband who mistreats Jenny and forces her into servitude. He acts as though we're trapped in some 1950s time warp where women have no agency and husbands rule with an iron fist. The most frustrating part is that he doesn't know a single thing about who I really am as a person, and he has never once made any genuine effort to find out anything about the way my wife and I actually live our lives together. Jenny has told me on numerous occasions that she's tried to explain to him, repeatedly and patiently, that both of us share household responsibilities equally, that we're partners in every sense of the word, and that we're nowhere near as backwards or regressive as he stubbornly believes us to be. But it seems there's just absolutely no changing his mind, no matter what evidence is presented to him or how many times the truth is explained. I was very annoyed today already, so I told Jenny quite bluntly that I didn't think it was a good idea for us to delay the legal process, and she looked upset but she agreed. So, we're probably going to file the petition tomorrow. She'd thought that we'd sit on it for a few days and wait to see if her dad does anything else, but I'm not willing to sit around and find out what he does. He's getting on my very last nerve now, and I can't let this go on. I'm actually regretting ever letting him back into my life. I was a fool to believe that he was even capable of changing, because if someone's not able to see who I am in 10 whole years, then they'll never be able to see the reality. I highly doubt he even wants to know me. He just wants to stick to his beliefs and doesn't even want to consider the possibility that I might be a half-decent guy. In doing so, he doesn't even realize that he's contradicting his own so-called morals. If he doesn't think his adult daughter is capable of making wise decisions, then he's actually undermining her as well. So, I don't see how I'm the bad guy here. He thinks he's progressive and forward-thinking, but I'm sorry, just believing that women should be able to work doesn't make him inherently better than me. He should know where to draw the line and realize that his daughter is a grown-up now and can choose what she wants to do for herself. She doesn't need him to come rescue her from her dominating husband, at the very least. What he said about Jenny's mom being disappointed was just disgusting because he knows that that's her soft spot, and yet he's targeting that just to get what he wants. I don't know why he hates me so much, but I spent a really long time wondering, and now I'm sick of thinking about it. I just want him out of my life. So, big day today. We finally filed a restraining order, and we have to be present in court in the next few days. He'll be served within 3 days, but my wife has already texted him and informed him that she wants him to stay away and leave us alone for good. She sent him a message saying that while she appreciated all that he had done for her, it was now impossible for her to look past his recent behavior towards me, and his threats against me and my family were not something she or I could take lightly. So, she decided to sever any and all ties with him once and for all. It was hard for her, but she did it nevertheless, and I couldn't be more proud of her. Honestly, he hasn't replied to that, and I don't think he will. I feel sorry for him now, honestly. He has nobody else here but Jenny, and now he's lost even her just because he was too set in his ways. He hated me more than he loved his daughter, and I really don't think there's anything sadder than that. Beyond all the legal matters we've been dealing with, we're also seriously considering relocating to a larger house to accommodate our growing family. With a baby on the way, our current place just won't provide the space we'll need in the coming months. The timing actually works out perfectly because my wife recently received a significant raise at work, which has improved our financial situation considerably and makes this move much more feasible than it would have been even a few months ago. Since she's still in her first trimester, we figured this would be the ideal time to start house hunting and settle into a new place before she gets too far along in her pregnancy and moving becomes more physically taxing for her. So, if everything goes according to plan, hopefully we'll be in our new home soon, setting up a nursery and preparing for our little one's arrival. On a much happier note, we decided to take my parents out to a wonderful restaurant for dinner tonight, and it was finally time to share the news we'd been holding on to. We sat them down and told them about the pregnancy, and I wish I could properly describe the joy and excitement that lit up their faces. They were absolutely thrilled for us, congratulating us with tears in their eyes and already talking about all the ways they'd spoil their grandchild. To celebrate this momentous occasion, we all ordered ice cream for dessert instead of the customary champagne that you'd typically expect at such an announcement. None of us felt right about drinking alcohol out of respect and solidarity for Jenny, who obviously couldn't partake, so we decided to keep the celebration alcohol-free and just as sweet in a different way. All in all, I'd say it was a genuinely good day, one of the best we've had in weeks, and I sincerely hope that things only continue to improve from here. I want to extend my thanks to everyone here who has offered advice, support, and kind words throughout this difficult ordeal. Please keep us in your thoughts and prayers as we move forward. With any luck, the next time I update you all, it'll be to share the wonderful news about our happy and healthy baby. I know it's been a while, but there wasn't much to share. We did get that restraining order against Frank, but it turned out to be totally unnecessary since he moved out a couple of weeks after. He sold his house and went back to Alaska, where Jenny used to live before she moved here, so that he could live with his brother. We heard about it from his neighbor, and, well, it was sad, but there was nothing we could do. He brought this upon himself. In better news, though, my wife and I have a beautiful baby girl now. She gave birth a few days back, and I'm still in disbelief that I'm actually a dad now. The young girl I met back in high school, who bonded with me over our mutual hatred for her French teacher, is not only my wife but also the mother of my daughter. I'm over the moon, and I just had to share this with everyone. I'm a dad now.